am about to get really nerdy. Everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today I am going to be talking about some of my favorite books as a writer, and what I mean by that is not writing craft books, and it's not necessarily my favorite books of all time, although there's probably a lot of overlap in there. What I mean by that is fiction books that I love from a writer's standpoint. You may have heard the term reading like a writer, which is something that writers kind of start to do after they've been writing for a while. You start to read, and as you're reading, as opposed to just noticing what you love about the story and all of those fun fangirling moments, you start to notice things like different techniques that writers use, or things that you might adapt or maybe do differently as a writer, and you start to just read and pick up on things more from a more behind the scenes perspective than necessarily just enjoying it for the pure entertainment of it, although you can still do that too, and I frequently do whenever I can read. If you guys don't know, I've been kind of lax in my reading schedule lately because I've been super busy with school and my capstone. I am finishing school this year. I am graduating. I cannot wait. I am really overwhelmed because I'm in my very last English course. It's my capstone English course that is supposed to prove that I've learned something over the past 4 years. So that's been a lot. So I've kind of been pre-recording as much as I can and filming some more light videos just while I'm getting through my capstone, and then I will be back to YouTube in full force, but I don't just want to disappear completely, so that's why you're getting this video. So these are books that for me in some way have inspired the way in which I write, or have taught me different things about how to write a good or compelling or exciting story, or maybe that I just really love the author's writing style and it's something that I look up to as an amateur writer, as an unpublished writer right now. These aren't really going to be in any particular order, but I do have some notes on my phone to help inspire me and remember why I thought these were such inspirational books, so I will get into that right now. The first book that is on this list is A Light on a Hill by Connie Lynn Cassette. I picked this book because I've read it twice now. I read it once for fun, and then I read it again as a part of Biblical Fiction Buffs, which is my online book club. You can find more information about it up here in this sidebar or down in the description box below. And I remember the first time I read it as a reader, and I really loved it. Obviously, it's Connie Lynn Cassette. How can you not? And the second time I read it more from a writer's perspective, and there was just so much that I noticed that I didn't notice maybe the first time, because the first time I was reading it to obsess over it because Connie Lynn Cassette. But the second time that I read it, I was reading it more to engross myself in the story so that I could talk about it in depth at our BFB book club meeting, and then also just, you know, to see what else I could possibly get out of it after having already read it once, which that's not saying that rereading books isn't a good thing. It's just I don't often get the time to do that, so I don't normally, unless it's a really good book and I have to reread it. So what I learned about this book is I learned about foreshadowing, and I learned about action and characters. So something interesting about this book that makes it unique is that it is actually a continuation. It's the first book in the Cities of Refuge series, but the characters from this book appear as secondary characters in her first series, which is the Out from Egypt trilogy. And what I learned about this book is that for me personally, I think the correct reading order to read Connie Lynn Cassette's books in is to read them in order of publication date, because otherwise you might miss out on some fun Easter eggs and things. But you can start with just A Light on the Hill, because she does such a good job of introducing you to the characters in such a short way that even if you haven't read the previous books where they appeared as characters, you can still get a pretty good handle on who they are and kind of a little bit of their backstory. So that was really intriguing to me, because I just loved the way that she introduced the characters, and you were able to understand who they were and why they were important, even if you hadn't read all of her previous books. Character introductions can often be hard to do because, how do you introduce a character and get an audience to care about them in such a short time, especially when a large part of their backstory isn't in this book, it's in a different book. She does a really great job with characters. Plus, these characters, especially the male characters in the Cities of Refuge series, are so swoon worthy. Oh my words. They're hot, guys. Derek is a snack, okay? Like, he's just, love him. So yeah, this book taught me a lot about characters, and it also taught me about foreshadowing. There's a lot of motifs in this book that foreshadow things that are yet to come in the future of the book, or even in the future of the series, which was like mind-blowing to me, because having read the rest of the series and then come back to this book, I was just like, wow. I had no idea that was gonna come full circle, and it totally was all set up in here, and I just, plotting. I'm a huge plotter. I have to have an outline, and just this book does it so well, and it smoothly incorporates the foreshadowing almost to the point where you don't even notice what is going on, and you don't even notice that something is being foreshadowed. Like, what? In that same vein of plotting, the next book that inspires me as a writer is, no surprise here, Land of Silence. I love this book. Sorry, I will never be able to say that loud enough or as many times enough. Like, there is no enough when it comes to saying how much I love and appreciate and adore and obsess over this book. It is the best book of all time. This book, if you don't know, is about the woman with the issue of blood, and it is so well done. But the thing that I love about this book is that just stuff from over here is still important over here. There's nothing about this book that is fluff. None of it is fluff. The characters also, each one of them has an arc or a sub-arc of some kind. No one gets forgotten. Everything is important. Everything works together super well. There are no holes. There are no blank spaces. It is just so well plotted. This is the standard for outlining. I can't even, I mean, I really can't get into it without even giving you guys like a ton of spoilers, because plot twists are a real thing in this book. But plotting, this book is just everything about plotting. The next book that I want to mention, again, shouldn't be a surprise. It's The Pharaoh's Daughter by Misu Andrews. This is the book we are currently studying in biblical fiction buffs, and it is also the first biblical fiction book that I ever read. This is the book that got me hooked on the genre, and one of the reasons that this book is probably such an inspiration to me is because I love Misu Andrews. She's the reason that I became obsessed with biblical fiction. Her books are amazing. She's amazing. She's like the sweetest, kindest soul in the world. Oh my words. But this book in particular, just, I love how it uses themes, and there's like a very clear theme, and the themes are incorporated so smoothly. The whole book like revolves around themes, which, like, I realize as I'm saying this, like, Jenna, isn't that the point of a book? To have a theme and to revolve around a theme? And like, yes, but this book just does it so well. Like, there's many books that you could read and someone could ask you, what was the theme of the book? And like 5 people could all have 5 different answers about what they thought the theme was, or like what message they thought, you know, the book addressed. And like, yeah, every book to a certain extent is, you know, a little bit subjective. But this book just handles different themes so well. I love how it's written. I love how there's like scripture incorporated throughout, and it's all relevant to Anip. That's the main character. Her name is Anip, or Anip. And I love how it's just all relevant to her journey and her core struggle, and like the theme of grief and fear and anxiety and all of that, like combined and rolled into one. So well written. And the characters' depth and journey, and how it's all of them experience something that is related to the central theme, the core struggle. And it's just so well written, and I love it. This book is one that, like, when I think about what is the theme of a book, I think about this one. And when I'm trying to even write my own books, and I'm trying to figure out like what the theme is, or what I want it to be, and how do I want it to be incorporated into the story, I think of this book when I think of themes. Another book that I want to mention is really just in general, like, this entire author's, like, their whole body of work. I love their work, but specifically I'm sticking with biblical fiction because I'm a biblical fiction writer. I'm a biblical fiction fan. I host a biblical fiction book club. So I'm specifically calling out one of their biblical fiction books, and that is Return to Me by Lynn Austin. I was absolutely obsessed with these books the first time I read them. I desperately want to do a reread of them. I tried to get BFB to vote for this one. It's okay. Can always pitch it later. And I just love Lynn Austin's writing. This is another book by Lynn Austin. It's called Where We Belong, and this one is just, again, one of my favorite books of all time. Both of these books are amazing, but these books specifically taught me about didactic techniques. And what I mean by didactic techniques is teaching techniques and how you can teach a message with fiction. So throughout her books, Lynn Austin just always incorporates these like fantastic little nuggets of wisdom, or these one-liners, or these just moments that you like think about and you're like, whoa, I have never thought about it like that. I want to write that down and save it and put it on a postcard and mail it to my friends and get it on a bookmark and stick it in the book. Get it on like a sticker so I can stick it to my forehead so that I never forget it. Like, that is just how like teaching these books are. And I think in Christian fiction, evangelical fiction, biblical fiction specifically, teaching a message or teaching a lesson through a book is kind of a common theme in the general genre. There's a lot of books that are obviously, you know, to entertain, but usually there's a subliminal message or a subliminal thread that is trying to be taught through fiction. And I just think she does an amazing job of putting these characters on these journeys that are relatable, even if they aren't exactly taking place in the same era that we are, and then throwing in these nuggets of wisdom from these older characters and having these characters learn lessons in ways that it's so just like, wow, I never would have thought of it like that. And then you learn a lesson yourself because you're living vicariously and you're learning vicariously through these characters. And just in general, didactic techniques in Lynn Austen books are great. They're absolutely wonderful. That's why I keep saying these would be great book club books. But apparently, my book club doesn't listen to me. I'm kidding. I love my book club. My book club is amazing. I'm really excited about my book club this month. I've got some amazing things planned for the end of Summer Biblical Fiction Buffs live event, so make sure that you're subscribed so that you don't miss that. The last book that I think has supremely influenced me as a writer is, again, no surprise, Redeeming Love by Francine Rivers. I'm only gonna hold up this copy for like a split second because I know that like 10 of you are gonna comment and say, where did you get that copy? And let me tell you now, this copy was an exclusive Lifeway edition that came out at like, I think the 20th anniversary of the book's publication. So it came out, I think, in 2017 in honor of the 1997 publication date. And it came out from Lifeway. It was exclusive, foil, very pretty, no longer exists. It was limited edition, it's gone. But I am here to tell you that in October, they are releasing another fabric hardcover. It will look like this. The old one looks like this. The new one looks like this. The old one looks like this. The new one looks like this. I will be linking the new one below in the description to make it easier so that we don't have to have a whole like comment fest where I reply to 10 people's comments with the same message that yes, this book is discontinued, but you can get a new one that is similar. Not the same, but similar. Fun fact, I'm actually doing my capstone project on Redeeming Love, so I'm sure by the time I'm done with my capstone, I'll have tons to say about this book. But this book for me is just the epitome of writing. I love Francine Rivers' writing style. I haven't read all of her books because they're kind of big and heavy and just a lot, but I love her writing style. Unpopular opinion, but you don't have to read every book by the author that you love to appreciate their writing style, because like their writing style is their writing style. This book has been such a formative influence, not only even just on my writing life, but on my personal life. I love this book. Many people do, many people don't, and that's, again, a-okay. I'm not gonna tell you that you need to go out and read Redeeming Love or else you're not a true fan of books. Like, guys, can't we move past that? I think it's great that everyone has different opinions on books and everyone has different, you know, tastes, and they like different things and they don't like different things, and that's all wonderful and amazing. For me personally, I loved this book. Would I recommend it to everyone? Honestly, no. I would not recommend this book to everyone. I would not say that everyone needs to read this book because we're all at different levels. We all like to read different things, and that's, again, a-okay. This book for me has taught me so much about characters, about character development, about plotting, about writing style, about voice in writing, but particularly when I think of this book, I think of sentimental fiction. And if you don't know what sentimental fiction is, here's where my English major is showing. Sentimental fiction is essentially fiction written by women for women, and sentimental fiction historically hasn't necessarily been looked at favorably by serious literary scholars or critics because it's not serious literature. A lot of times sentimental fiction deals with characters' emotions and feelings and drama rather than, you know, more practical elements. When you think of sentimental fiction, you might think of books like The Secret Garden or A Little Princess or Little Women, or just very, I don't want to say it, but like female-oriented fiction. And during the postmodern and modernist era, this type of writing and this type of fiction generally fell out of style. Sentimental fiction primarily uses a female voice or appeals to a female voice in the terms of the storytelling in order to promote a message or share the author's own beliefs through a story, which I think is something that we can generally agree on is kind of what most Christian fiction is nowadays. It's appealing to a reader in order to persuade them of a particular ideology or teach a message or show them a lesson through a story, kind of like a parable. But when I think of sentimental fiction, I'm specifically thinking of primarily fiction written by women about women, or that appeals to a female voice or a female perspective. Not saying that men can't read Redeeming Love and learn something. I'm just like, you know, from a historical standpoint here, guys, historical standpoint. During the 20th century, that kind of writing and style tended to fall out of fashion in terms, and we sort of leaned more towards like Hemingway and The Great Gatsby and more serious works of literature that portrayed the world in a more lifelike fashion and showed that people have faults and that everyone has a dark side and blah. I have read some amazing articles that like defend sentimental fiction, and personally, for me, this book falls into the sentimental fiction category, and that is what I am arguing in my capstone. If you'd like, I can present my capstone to you guys when I'm done and when I pass and when I graduate, hopefully. But yeah, this book just taught me so much about the kind of style that I want to write in. This book was in many ways what I believe to be a sort of return to form, to like the pinnacle of sentimental fiction and what it means to write with a particular lesson in mind. I recall reading that in an interview, Francine Rivers wrote this book because she wanted to answer the question, and I'm not getting this word for word, so I apologize. She wanted to answer the question of how can I share my faith with my non-Christian friends, or with my friends who maybe aren't predisposed to Christianity or don't really want anything to do with it. And the answer came through writing a story or writing a romance novel that was allegory, largely allegorical and largely parable, which again, very common in sentimental fiction is like the use of allegory and scriptural references. And for her, writing this allegorical work became a statement of faith for her, and was a way to share the gospel through a story, because oftentimes we may find that people are more interested or more prone to be open to new ideas when they're reading them in a story, as opposed to when they are just being shouted at them, as in, you should believe this idea or you should feel this way about something. And this book just to me is just the peak of that, and it's like the peak of writing in so many different ways. But for me, Francine Rivers is a large part of the reason that I write the way in which that I write. And she taught me so many lessons through this book, both about writing and about life and just about God and many, 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 many things. And there aren't enough words to truly explain how much I like this book. I'm probably doing a terrible job, but there you have it. These are 5 books which have helped me as a writer, helped me grow, or 5 books that are my favorites from a writing standpoint in terms of how they were written and what they taught me about how I can therefore write as well and what I learned from them. There's probably, and like I know for sure, there is definitely a lot of overlap between these books and my favorite books of all time. And maybe that's just because the lines between writer and reader get blurred very quickly around here. But needless to say, if you are leaning towards writing biblical fiction or Christian fiction, these are some books that I highly recommend you pick up, or even just authors. I know that like Lynn Austin, as I said before, writes in multiple different genres. Francine Rivers writes in multiple different genres. I think the others mostly just write in biblical fiction, so, you know, that's kind of my thing. That's kind of my jam. Someday soon, I will probably actually do a video on my favorite writing books, specifically my favorite writing craft books, but I hope you enjoyed this for now. If you are a writer, then what are some of your favorite fiction books from a writer's perspective? Leave those recommendations down in the comments. I will be sure to check them out. Thank you guys so much for watching this video. Once again, my name is Jenna Van Mourik. I am an inspired writer and an inspirational fiction reader who reads, writes, and lives for Jesus. You can find more information about me in the description box below, or right over here on this little pop-up card. That'll tell you where you can find me. I'm active pretty much every day on Instagram and as often as I can be everywhere else. Soon to be even more often once I'm done with school. Yes! Thanks again so much for watching. I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!